Hey there, Chad here, and this is Pro Cycling Manager 23. This is episode 13, lucky 13, of my Complete Beginner's Guide. Now, it's been a very long time since I put out a video, and I do apologize for that. In the past, I've done videos that were more real-time, where I basically was recording everything that happened and then would, edit it down a little bit, but just show that. But with this particular project, this needs to be more of a commentary, and I am not very good at that. And it's been taking me some time to get the things together in a way that I feel I can present them to have some meaning so you're not just watching blather. I have about 9 hours of video that I'm editing down here, and we'll see how long this turns out. But the sad news is there wasn't a whole lot to talk about. There's a couple of neat things that happened. I got a breakaway win. Hadn't had that happen on this series yet. I got a couple of upgrades that I was able to do, and I get through a few series, but in 9 hours, nothing earth-shattering or new really came up. So I'm just going to go over what my strategy was a little bit and how things played out. So first up, I leveled up at the end of the month, and I decided after taking a lot of time to look at this, certainly not 9 hours, but there were a few minutes of me bouncing between here trying to figure out what I wanted to take. I decided to take Barodur, and I apologize if I'm completely messing that up. But that's what I took because it gave me the best stamina and resistance bump. And the other things that I'm interested in, like sprint and flat, sprint was not affected, but flat goes up a decent amount as well. But resistance and stamina went up 3 points. The other choices I had wouldn't have put it up quite that much, and so I decided to go with that one. Actually, stamina only goes up 2, but that's the best I was getting out of that anyway. The other option would have been stage races, the difference really being that flat was not affected, and I was feeling pretty good about where I was with my mountain and medium mountain and hills. And as for skill points, I had already maxed out attentiveness. That's already checked all 3 of those boxes. So the next targets I generally have are fitness peak or training. Technique is another one that I look at, and I had taken 1 point in that. That's the one that allows me to kind of sneak through the peloton to get from back to front relatively easily. I decided to go ahead and go with fitness peak this time, kind of as a coin flip between taking that or training. I'll probably take my next point in training, and then I might start looking at something like network to improve my options for selecting new teams at the end of the year. More to come on that. I've been focusing on trying to get Beat Cycling to pick me up for next season, so I'm going to go ahead and continue with that plan. First up was the Tour of Malopolska, and in stage 1, which is a very flat stage, my team director asked me to try to finish in the top 3 of the GC. Knowing that I'm not terribly strong flat rider, I set up a sprint train, which has been my MO lately. I set that up to help protect my riders towards the end to allow them to finish strong. And everything was going really well, but about a third of the way in, Ruta had a tire puncture, and that set us back. In fact, a couple of us dropped off the back, and we were able to catch back up to the peloton. It took some doing. A lot of energy went into making that happen. But at the end, ended up with a decent finish. Chad, Missouri ends up with a 25th, and I had a 26 as well with Funta. Ruta ends up in 64th. And part of that was I had failed to reset him from a hard push. Probably if I'd set him to auto, he might have had a little bit stronger finish. He probably had burned himself out in the meantime. But a 25th, not too bad. Stage 2 looked like something I'd be a lot more comfortable with several heavy climbs. And I did set up a sprint train again and pushed forward. The end result wasn't optimal. I ended up with a top 20 though at 19th, and I really couldn't complain about that. It was a pretty uneventful race. And stage 3 also looked like something I might do well in, but I had a race day condition of -1. My plan was to try to maybe attack on this last climb up to the finish line, and as we're approaching it, I have Funta leading me out, and he's doing a pretty good job, and we suddenly catch the breakaway that was ahead of us, And as we're pushing up this hill, suddenly we are on a breakaway ourselves. Just the two of us. It started as 4, but it dropped to 2, and we're at 16 seconds, and my gel kicks in. So I decided we were going to give it a go. Now, usually when I'm in this situation, any kind of little breakaway like this goes away right away, and you'll notice that at first it kicked back to 13 seconds, but then I lost where the peloton was. We were at 12 seconds, then 17, and then suddenly 22, I think, back to 13, 11, 14. So it's shifting around, and I'm thinking maybe I can make this actually happen. A couple of guys catch us, one does. And we continue to push up this hill, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna bonk. He's gonna pass me, but I've still got a little bit of energy. Looking good on red bar, yellow's not too bad, and there's the finish line. And I am not pulling back. In fact, I'm pulling away from him, and I collect a stage win there on the stage 3 of Tour of Malopolska. That's the first time I've broken away at the very tail end of a stage race and been able to make something happen with it. The very next day was the GP van Koningsloo, and it is a classic, well, one day race anyway, and it's considered flat, but it has a lot of jaggedness to it, lots of ups and downs, and I didn't really expect to do very well in this one. And that turned out to be self-fulfilling probably, as I finished 110th. I was not considered a leader, which was good. I think at some point I went back and got water for the team to try to help out. I did meet my team's request that I lead for a certain amount of distance, so I did grab some personal points. But other than that, just not a terribly good outing for me. Now, I mentioned my level of fitness being at 90%, and I decided to take a look at that and see what I could do to impact that moving forward. You have a couple of controls here when you go into your training window. You can basically set some of your rest time. And what you do is you click on the rest time, and then you can drag it onto the grid, and you can put it somewhere. Now, you'll notice my fitness had fallen off to 90%. My tiredness is climbing, and that's what was really worrying me. You'll notice that's just kind of starting to exponentially go up. I wanted to try to reduce that a little bit if I could. So I went ahead and put in a couple of rest breaks after major races that I wanted to participate in, trying to avoid any spaces where I really need to be ready to go. Probably should have done some of this a little earlier. That would have helped quite a bit, but it does help bring things back under control, and I feel like it did help with how things moved going forward. I also reset all of my training to make sure I was hitting areas that I wanted to try to improve, specifically sprint, flat, and things that would affect stamina and resistance. Next up was the 3-stage Route Urlin, 4 days after the Classic. And I did okay in the first stage here, set up a group, and we were able to capture a few mountain points in the very last mountain stage just before the end of the race. Had a small breakaway of 7 cycles, and that was able to hold on to the end, where Chad Missouri collected a 3rd place finish in this stage. He almost held on, but he got run down right there at the end. Stage 2 was fairly flat, and it ended in a mass sprint, as the announcer often likes to call out. And I ended up with an 18th place finish. I thought the finish line was a little closer than it was. I sprinted just a fraction early. Not sure it made a big difference. And 18 wasn't horrible. Stage 3 was also a relatively flat stage and ended in a mass sprint as well. And here I was able to make a 21st place finish just outside of the top 20. But that meant that I finished with an overall GC of 3rd, and I was really happy about that. That 3rd place GC in a tour landed me a total of 36 points afterwards, and that is always welcome. Then next up was the individual time trial for nationals, and I finished respectably. I ended up with an 18th place overall finish. I was happy with that. And then it was time for the USA Championships, and I'm happy to say that I was able to hold on for third place finish there behind Jared Scott and Scott McGill. I'm concerned that this race is broken, though. If you look at this, 9 of us finished ahead of the pack, and then the pack was 43 minutes behind us. That's quite a drop. We actually lapped them 2 or 3 times on this course, and I'm just wondering if something's not quite right in the game there. That just doesn't seem quite right for me. Nonetheless, I'm happy to have had that result, and we moved on from here. And next it was off to Romania for the 4-stage Sibiu Tour, which opens with an individual time trial, and I was picked to do well in the time trial, and I did not do well. I finished 60th. I couldn't get my rhythm down, I think, in this one. It just felt like I think I overthought it and tried to do too much, and it just fell apart. Then into the second stage. This was a stage much more to my liking, and I decided I would attack on that last climb. It's a pretty steep climb. I thought I could make up some time on the rest of the competitors, and I had Silva lead me out. He did a great job, and I got rolling and was able to pull ahead, made my own little breakaway, and finished ahead of the pack, and with a first place finish. Was really happy with that one. I didn't completely see it coming. I was really expecting somebody to catch me from behind or for my energy to run out and bonk, but it didn't happen. I planned this one perfectly. Stage 3 of this tour is relatively flat except for that enormous climb at the end. And in this particular run, we caught the breakaway right at the foot of that. There was a breakaway of about 15 riders for a while, and we caught them right at the bottom of that hill, and then everything just went haywire. We've got a single peloton right now, and by the time we get to the top, we have, like 50 different groups. I was able to finish in the top 20 with a 16th place finish on this one. After winning the previous stage, I wasn't really sure what to expect from this one. That's a pretty steep climb. My energy wasn't awesome, and I'm at a -1 race day condition. You may recall it wasn't too long ago that I was concerned about this rider. It didn't feel like he was really producing at all, and now I'm getting top 20s pretty regularly. Right now it's in that 15 to 20 range mostly, but nonetheless, that's certainly a marked improvement over where I was earlier in the season. Stage 4 was more of the same with 2 major climbs in the middle of the stage, and then at the end, one more pretty brutal climb. Finished on a small downhill, but that climb was going to take it out of you. I fell off the back during that last climb, but I did finish in 27th for the stage. So not a train wreck, that's for sure. Would have liked to have finished a little stronger. It did drop me in the GC. I ended up 17th overall for the tour. And as it turned out, I did help my own cause with that finish, as I had an evolution of interest message pop up after that tour completed. It had improved my standing with some teams, so I was glad to see that. Wanted to show real quick, I had earlier put in a rest period, and that was coming up here. And what you'll see is as we work through this, my tiredness is going to fall off significantly once that week completes. It goes down 17%, which was a very welcome change. I was trending in the wrong direction. Now, my fitness will go down as well with that, but I was a little more concerned about how high the tiredness was getting. I'm sure there's a balance out there, and you might find some videos by some other folks that understand how those numbers interact a little better, but it felt to me that the tiredness was really going to start to be an impact soon if I didn't address that. I do have some more significant training coming up soon, and that will improve my fitness. Of course, it will drive up the tiredness as well, and that's part of the reason I wanted to address that where I did. So tiredness fell off to 41%. Fitness did drop a little bit further, but not nearly as impacted as the tiredness was on that. And then finally it was off to Slovenia for the GP Kranj. And this race was not one that I was originally on my schedule, I don't think. I used Team Points to add this one. I liked the profile of it. It's a one-day race. It was one I wanted to give a try, see how well I could do, and I finished 17th. I don't think the team was planning on doing this one, so it was an ad, and Funta ended up with a 15th place finish there. So that was really good for the team. I'm glad we did this one. Well, that was a lot of races to cover and a couple of pointers there that we were able to squeeze in between some of those race highlights. When we pick up in the next episode, I would expect that I will have finally received some offers from race teams to join their ranks, as it is getting to be that time of year where contracts need to be signed. So coming up will be some pointers on how to deal with contracts and what to look for there. But until then, I want to thank you for your time, and until next, fair travels.